Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. With me, as always, is my co-host David Poole, owner of Mid County Farm and Feed. I'm Aaron, and let me tell you something. It's hot. It is hot outside. We're in August now. My garden is struggling. I cut it back, like we said on the last episode, and we were talking about, hey, learn to let go. But now, you know what I have? I have a problem.
What's
My problem is lots of bare soil.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, I have I cut back just like we said. You know, all of my plants that seem to be really struggling, I got rid of them because I don't want to invite more pests in my garden. But now I just have bare soil, and that August sun is beating down on it, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe my soil is diminishing. What should I do?
Cover it.
Cover it.
Cover it.
Cover it with what?
There's a lot of different things that you could do, but ideally, you plant a cover crop. But
Okay.
that's a dual answer question.
Is that
here.
like alfalfa grass or?
Not alfalfa here, but
Okay.
we'll get into the specifics of what you could do, what you could plant as we go along. But
So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about cover crops. Okay, great.
And whether or not you use a cover crop really depends on what your plan is. And we always talk about planning, but what's happening in this space next?
So let me tell you what my plan is. So I've culled my summer garden, almost everything except for my peppers. I've kept my peppers because they're doing fine. And now I have some seeds germinating, and then I'm going to buy some transplants. I want to go for round 2.
Okay.
Right? But I have bare soil right now, and I
So-
don't want it to get worse.
If you have bare soil, but you're planning to reuse that like in the very short term, which it sounds
Yeah.
like you are,
That's
because
my plan.
fall gardening or the second warm season garden, it's almost here. Cover crop is not going to be ideal for you.
I will tell you too, I'm not going to use all of my raised bed gardens.
Okay.
I just want to use like half
Yeah.
for the second season.
So
I have other half that I don't know what to do with.
that's perfect because most people will plan out their spring garden, right? They plan it out, they harvest it, and they're at the point where you are, where they finally let go of those plants. And then not only did they let go of those plants, they let go of gardening for the rest of the year.
Some
They're
some
just
people
like
do.
they're like that gardening in their mind is only a spring to summer activity, and they're missing out on one of the easiest and most diverse seasons of growing. And on the other side, there are people that just they're not interested in the fall garden. Maybe they don't have a need for it again, and that's responsible. That's sustainable by not overdoing it.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something with those beds, and so there's two ways that we can approach the situation that you have. So obviously the beds that we've pulled a lot of things out of, and we're gonna replant. We can't just leave them bare.
Right,
we
right.
can, but there's some negative things to that.
Well, what are the negatives to just
number
just
one,
non-intervention?
when we leave bare soil, what's the one thing that always happens to bare soil?
It kind of compacts and settles in, and
True.
And weeds. I get nothing but weeds in there.
Mother Nature covers it.
Yeah.
So you think about like any area that you've ever been, whether it is like finished surfaces, like concrete surfaces, everything. Nature covers all bare spaces if it's left alone.
Even in like the harshest conditions.
Yeah.
Have you ever drove by the mall and realized that there's about a 6-inch strip between the lanes and there's grass growing in it, and you just think about that environment where it's like that concrete's probably 140 degrees in the summertime, and grass is just growing in it happily.
The right thing will find its way to grow into whatever conditions are left bare.
And especially here in Zone 9, we have really aggressive grasses and weeds and all things like that.
You kind of want to, like, when you think about how Mother Nature covers bare soil, and like that the ground is always covered. The best way to look at that is to look at, like, if you've ever been on a camping trip or you've ever been to a state park, or around here if you've been to like Village Creek, you know if you go and you walk along a trail, how many times, other than the physical trail which has been trampled on over and over and over again
Sure.
and is the anomaly, how many bare ground areas do you see? Not necessarily with plant growth, but it is covered with something.
None. I
if
mean,
if
none.
there's no vegetation growth, there is leaf debris,
Right.
there's organic matter, everything is covered, and no actual person or somebody's not going in there and making this happen. It's naturally happening. And so cover crop is one way that we can mimic nature. But also, if you have beds like you're talking about,
Hmm.
where you're in the short term, you're going to be using them, we still need to cover them, but maybe not necessarily with a living cover.
Okay.
Maybe we need to make sure they're mulched,
Oh yeah.
heavily
Okay. Yeah.
mulched, because, like you said, compaction, heat. So there's all these elemental
It's not
factors.
getting any shade anymore.
It's yeah,
My plants are gone, right? So that sun is just baking the ground.
and inside that soil are living organisms.
Right.
There's the soil food web, and now we don't have roots and plants growing in there, so we've taken away part of the soil food web system, and then
Yeah.
we
I
couple
feel like it's
that.
just becoming a desert.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
couple that with heat. Heat's drying it out. It's making there's no moisture moving through it.
That's right.
It's cracking. It's
It's like
getting
becoming
hard.
anaerobic
Yeah,
almost, right? There's no movement of water and oxygen in and out.
and it also, when you have bare soil and you have water falling, I've talked a lot about this recently in the last couple solo episodes I did, about how when water falls on bare ground, there is nothing to dissipate it. So it's hitting with full impact on the ground, and it brings energy, and that energy is pressing down on the
Yeah.
soil,
Yeah.
and you're increasing the compaction in your raised
That
bed,
makes
in
sense.
the ground, in your landscaping. And so the soil is essentially becoming poorer and poorer and poorer if it maintains and stays bare. And like I said, desert's a great example. You lose all your water holding capacity. You lose a lot of the life in the soil,
Right.
and then you're going to turn back and go back later and want to plant something in it.
And that's kind of like deserts are full with dirt, but not soil.
Yeah,
And here we have soil because it's the difference is living and non-living.
yep.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so you turn around and you want to go back in there in the long term and put something back in there, but you left it bare. It's not going to be as robust when it comes to nutrients, water holding capabilities. It's
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
be the best that it can be. It can be resolved, it can be fixed. I mean,
You can like amend it by hand and stuff.
even the
Yeah.
desert can be made to grow things again with the right inputs and the right practices. But utilizing cover is really important. Now, if you have a bed, let's say you like most people, maybe not everybody's going to grow in the fall. You don't have to be growing something for harvest.
Okay.
You
Right.
you
Right.
can be growing something that is bringing back value to the
And
soil.
we've talked about that in other episodes too,
Yeah.
where people neglect flowers, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of people get so vegetable centric, so like vegetable harvest minded that they forget everything else. So I'm following you on
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
One thing that I did mention too about bare soil too, depending on the soil condition, it can lead to erosion.
that makes
So
sense. Yeah,
you
yeah.
get
There's nothing stopping the water from pulling it out.
yep.
Like the roots hold it together.
A good example around here is you think about yards that have good tree cover, and we go through dry times, and like the ground cover, or like usually turf grass, begins to dissipate from the competition of the tree roots,
Yeah,
and then you get bare ground. Nothing wants to grow there, and then roots become exposed because the soil is typically over time washing out of those areas. So you get erosion, and that can lead to um, established trees, you know,
struggling.
dying
Yeah,
out, falling. There's all kinds of factors that can play into it. So keeping it covered brings a lot of value to you. Um, I think that you've got to look at moisture retention.
right.
Where,
Okay.
especially right now, it's in August.
So hot.
If we leave it, we don't want to lose all the moisture holding capabilities. Even if we're not going to plant a living cover crop, that mulch is going to help keep that soil with moisture retaining qualities. So in a couple weeks, when you go put in second rounds of warm season
Hmm.
crops,
And it also kind of keeps the all of the microbes alive as well,
yeah.
right? So what's some of the good cover that you? So we'll continue with my brain just completely quit working.
That
Um,
happens.
but yeah, so we'll continue with my example from my yard, right? I'm not gonna have as big of a fall garden as I did, so I'm only gonna use half my beds. So the beds that I'm going to use in the fall that have like one plant in it, you think I should mulch it, right? Just the parts that I'm not utilizing. So what's a good mulch?
So if you're using like a mulch cover, there's a couple different options. You can use like shredded like debris, like leaves and stuff,
Okay.
but you want them to be like broken down some. You don't want to
So
put.
I have great live oaks in my front yard, and I just have massive amount of leaves everywhere. I could
You
use that?
could. Oaks are a hardwood and they take longer to break down.
The
And
leaves do?
yep, so
Okay.
it would be better to like break them down, like chop them up
Like
into.
with a lawnmower or
Yeah,
something. Yeah. Okay.
you utilize that where it will break down faster,
Hmm.
because if you put full leaves in there, you can go back months later and still be coming up with full pieces of leaf,
Yeah.
and that's taking away resources potentially. Like it microbes are trying to break that down in the soil.
And they're
it's
utilizing
using
energy on that
it's
instead
using
of, yeah.
oxygen, moisture,
Interesting.
nitrogen that might be needed for your plants. You can utilize like standard mulches, like so you could go buy mulch,
Hmm.
but you would want to use like a composted mulch,
Okay. Yeah.
something
Okay.
that's been brought well into the composting phase. It's still shredded and it's still kind of big,
And it's got some woody bits in
but
there
it
and
also has fines in it. When you
right.
pick it up, you can see things that are almost, they're not quite soil consistency, but they're fine. They're not big chunky pieces. They're
Right.
not big
It's
round.
not like
Yeah,
landscaping wood mulch.
yeah. You
Yeah.
just think like shredded,
Yeah. Okay.
like
That's good.
and those will do very very well. And you would want to cover like with a 2 to 3 inch layer. You need a thick layer of mulch. If you don't put enough, you're not really doing a whole lot for insulating and moisture retention. You could use pine straw. You could go out and collect pine
We
needles,
got a lot of
longleaf
that
pine
here in
needles
some
from
places.
your neighborhood, or maybe in your own yard, or you could purchase those as well. They're very economical and they do a really good job in a garden setting.
What about lawn clippings, grass clippings?
Uh, I wouldn't typically want to put grass clippings in there. I'm not saying that it couldn't be used, because there's nitrogen
Hmm.
and it's organic matter, but when you're pulling up grass clippings, it'd be an easy way to introduce a weed species, pick up some
Oh, okay.
seeds,
Okay.
put it in there,
Dog poop.
and there are some vigorous weeds that you might not want. Be an easy way to get nut grass, maybe.
I wouldn't even have thought of that.
Um,
That's good.
so that would be my personal take. Not saying that you couldn't do it, but I wouldn't advise it.
Okay.
Um, Now, when we get into like the true concept of like cover crops,
Which is a living.
which is a living
Yeah.
thing, you could use other vegetables like squash, or we've talked about it before, like the
Yeah.
Three Sisters
Hmm.
method. You, you might not want that squash. You may not have any use for it, but you could grow it as a vigorous ground
Because
cover,
it just creeps and crawls over
and
yeah.
it keeps the soil covered. It insulates. It helps reduce weeds.
We did talk
So
about that.
there are options that are vegetables, and then there's like um, those would be good to grow around things that were like low growing, that will work with other vegetables.
The squash, right? Okay.
Squash, um,
Like is what about like sweet potato vines? Is that
sweet
another?
potato
Is
vine. Yeah,
okay.
sweet potato vine is a great ground cover, and it doesn't require much, if any, input from you. Sweet potato vine is typically pretty drought tolerant.
So you can just throw
Um,
some of those in your bed and just let it go.
yep. Um,
Okay.
and
And
that's
they're
so
pretty. And they're
They
really
are,
pretty. Yeah.
and you get harvestable produce out of it if you like sweet potatoes. So I mean, it's a win-win across the board.
You give me some gold here. Yeah.
Yeah,
You give me
it'd be pretty
what
good.
about regular potatoes?
So if regular potatoes, no, because they grow upright.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
they grow more like a tomato
They're
plant.
not as viney.
No,
Okay. I've never grown regular
no.
potatoes. So.
Now you could, and if you're getting ready to plant in a garden, you could layer in all kinds of different species of plants to block light from accessing the soil, but I
Hmm.
still would use a mulch in there to help preserve the the water
Okay.
and
Yeah,
whatnot.
that makes
But
sense. Yeah.
I densely plant a lot, and so a lot of times there's not a lot of space for the sun to actually hit the soil. But I still will find things that like to grow in shady environments that will germinate or pop up in there, not in abundance, but when I do couple that with mulching, I find that I'm a lot more successful in keeping everything happy across the
Hmm.
board. Um, so cover crops come in different shapes and sizes when we're talking about living cover crops. So we could use nitrogen builders. So
What does that
nitrogen
mean?
builders are essentially they're plants that pull in atmospheric nitrogen. They're nitrogen fixers.
Yeah.
So a good example would be peas.
Okay.
So even if you don't like growing, kind of like if you don't like squash, like let's say you have soil that maybe things aren't growing really well. Maybe it's nitrogen deficient. You tested your soil. We could plant in there nitrogen affixing plants,
That's going to bring nitrogen from the atmosphere
atmosphere,
and push it down into the soil.
and it's going to store it in the root system. And then we can come back and we can use what we call the chop and drop method,
Hmm.
where we just chop the plant off or cut it off at the base, and we just leave that green matter
The
on top,
tops. Yeah.
and that acts as a mulch. It's going to
Okay.
break
Yeah.
down and compost back into the soil. But then once that plant begins to die, then bacteria that are in the soil are going to begin to move in and break down those nodes of nitrogen,
And the roots. Yeah.
releasing them
Wow.
into
Okay.
the soil.
Hmm.
So you're replenishing your soil by putting in nitrogen fixers. Or you could do that following, maybe you planted a bunch of really heavy feeding items. Maybe you planted maybe a bunch of corn,
Yeah.
and you want to come back in with nitrogen fixers to
And
help
that's why,
replenish that.
and that's kind of like, so we're usually talking on this show, on this podcast, about the backyard gardener and the hobbyist, because that's what we are essentially, right? But when I see, the big dogs out there, the people that have 400 acres
Yeah,
and they're planting stuff, is that why they grow soy? Is the soy like a cover crop?
they
Because
can, yeah.
they plant corn first, and then once they're done with that, they plant soy behind
Most
it.
people associate cover crops with large scale farming, and most
Yeah.
people don't think it's something that they need or should do. Uh, but at the end of the day, they will be more successful by not leaving the soil bare.
Okay,
You
and
know,
that's why they do it in the large scale farming.
it is a way. It is a regenerative way. A couple examples of things that you could do, like so during the spring and summer, you could plant, just typical types of peas, legumes. So you could plant purple hull peas, black eye peas, any kind of cowpea in that family. So
So
crowder
you're
peas.
saying all peas, you're not saying beans.
No,
Okay,
peas, not
peas. Okay,
beans.
peas, not beans.
And you could also do like in the wintertime, you could do maybe like green peas. They are in the same boat. They're nitrogen fixers. There are some other things. So we move into fall. It's most people are familiar with them. If there's any people that are hunters out there, that a lot of people plant food plots,
Okay,
and a lot of your food plot items are actually great cover crop items for the gardener. So you could plant um, Austrian winter peas. They're
okay.
used in erosion control. They're used as nitrogen fixers. They're good for wildlife. They're good for your soil.
So you're saying the hunters know these because they plant them for
Yep.
the wildlife? Oh
They
wow.
plant them for the wildlife, but they also they rejuvenate the soil in a sense at the same time.
Boy, that's a holistic sort
Yeah,
of an
yeah, it's
idea.
pretty cool. You could do crimson clover. So crimson clover is more of an upright clover, and it is great for pollinators. It puts on a really, really beautiful crimson bloom.
Is it the little
It's
balls?
kind of like furry, fuzzy.
Yeah.
So it grows up. Not It's not like a
It's not like a
traditional
creeping ground.
creeping
Yeah.
like white clover
Okay.
that which those are nitrogen fixers too.
Okay.
But in the fall time, when most people have dormant soil or there's bare ground, your crimson clover would be an excellent option for that.
Hmm.
And same way there, you grow it when it's done, you chop it off, and
Just chop and drop.
yep,
Let it lay
chop and
there.
drop.
Yeah.
Um, there are um, there's another classification of cover crops that are essentially what we call biomass producers. So this is another thing that will dwindle down if you leave soil bare, and that's biomass. So that's like the mass of potentially living
It's
species,
like the organisms,
organisms
right?
in the soil, or also biomass is it's like the the cumulative weight of like organic materials like dead or near dead things that are
Yeah,
in the soil. So you think about
like
root
old roots.
systems.
Yeah,
So by leaving the soil bare and there's nothing in there and you don't do anything, eventually those roots break down and there's no longer anything there. And if you don't replenish with a new crop of some sort to grow roots, then you're reducing the biomass and that leaves not a lot for the organisms to stay. It also makes the soil kind of compact, whereas a lot of those roots are growing in, opening up the soil, allowing in oxygen and water. So biomass producers are good. A lot of people will plant like millet, cereal rye, with
oh
that
yeah, yeah.
Elbon rye, which
Uh huh.
is a great thing in the fall.
Like winter grass is
It's a
yeah.
grain. You're like think
Okay.
about grains, not
Mm,
necessarily grasses, but grains.
okay.
So,
Barley and rye
yeah,
and duckweed, all that stuff.
yeah, like millets are real common. It'll do well here. Certain types of oats will do well here. And yes, they can
Interesting.
drop seeds and they might grow back next year, but I mean, it the value outweighs the con
Yeah,
here.
and you get enough value from keeping your soil in tip top shape more than you would get from like say the grains that you're getting.
Yeah,
That's
and
not the point of
you're
it,
not going to
right?
be growing enough to harvest
Right.
and
You're not
like
going to make a loaf of bread out of
yeah, and
this. Yeah.
process this stuff. Like
It
most
has a
people,
job to do, and it's not necessarily to
yeah,
make the
you
grain.
know, it's there to preserve the soil. So that's definitely another classification of cover crop. Uh, Another one would be we'll call them like soil busters or like deep root
So these
builders.
are things that the roots kind of get down in and break the soil
Right.
up. Okay, a soil
So
buster.
you compaction obviously is something we've talked a lot about on this show,
Yeah.
and that most people in zone 9 and southeast Texas and the coastal regions are highly familiar with is dense clay
Right.
compacted soil.
Absolutely.
There's lots of moisture pressing down all the
And
time.
and sometimes we get bouts of really heavy rain,
Yeah.
and then we'll get bouts of no rain, and that leads to compaction, right? Because
Yeah,
all that weight of the water, and then
and
you
the average home nowadays does not have overstory cover.
no,
So,
right,
like my personal garden home has overstory cover. We have trees over some of the beds,
sure,
so it stops and it dissipates the velocity of the rain falling, and it reduces the amount of compaction. But the average, home nowadays is wide open,
yeah,
and when the rain comes down, it comes down in full force, and there's nothing to stop it. And so you get compaction. So you can use root building cover crops.
yeah.
Or probably the most common example is a radish. A
Oh
radish
yeah,
is a great. It's essentially a taproot, and it's growing down, and it's expanding, and
yeah.
it's
And
pushing
it's like
open the
loosening of
soil.
that, yeah.
Uh,
So I guess carrots would also be considered one too.
yeah, yeah,
Radish,
definitely. So
carrots,
turnips,
daikon,
daikon radish
yeah.
is like the
That's like
number
the number one.
one like soil buster, and they do that. They're also a cover crop for wild or like
And
for wildlife.
you get a big old radish out of it,
Yep.
right? So that's pretty
So
cool. Maybe
you
not a little French breakfast
you
radish.
get
You
the
got to get
long
that
ones,
daikon. Yeah,
and so it's kind of interesting to see these are common things that are sort of part of our everyday life in a way, like cereal grains and stuff, but
yeah.
we're utilizing them not for what we commonly know them for, but we're utilizing them for soil
For soil
preservation and soil
maintenance.
amendments.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We could also be doing things that will maybe help with pollinators. So flowering covering crops. There's
Well, like you said, the clover.
the
That's
clover,
one,
yeah.
right? That's
So
synergistic.
we can be supporting fall pollinators. So even if
Sunflower's a good one. Sunflower's a good
yeah,
fall. There's a lot of fall varieties of that.
so I mean
Hemlock, maybe.
you can see that like essentially overall like cover crops there's something for every season, and they kind of really fall directly in line for me with the season which most people choose not to garden or don't know enough about gardening.
Like fall into
Yeah,
winter.
fall into winter.
Fall into winter, yeah.
But it's not necessarily for everybody, but it's a good way to let beds rest. If
Hmm.
if you've been having issues with certain beds, you can plant those out and give them a break and help replenish it, and not be having to worry about trying to manipulate everything to get
Right,
a good
right.
harvest out of.
I'll tell you what I so I'm gonna summarize this from what I seem to have learned. I think I brought this up. I said I'd like to learn about cover crops. I don't
Yeah,
know a lot about them, but what I've learned now is that if you do not utilize a cover crop, if you just let your soil stay bare, that's the quickest way for your soil to turn into dirt.
yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at this whole thing.
It's in the long term, you're going to make yourself more successful by taking care of the soil the same way you would as taking care of the plant itself.
Yeah,
When the plant's growing, you're focused on it being healthy.
right.
And at the end of the day, that plant can't be healthy without healthy soil. So whenever we are taking a break or we have empty beds, we've got to still be focused and realize that long term, we are going to be far more successful
Yeah.
by.
It seems more natural too, utilizing a cover crop when it comes back to the season that you want to grow. If you're a once a year
Absolutely.
grower, you're going to have a much healthier soil. So you're going to start out
and
in a better
and
place.
it mimics nature.
Yeah.
I talked about just like going out in the
Going out.
woods
Yeah.
or walking out on a trail. It's mimicking what's actually happening in nature, and you're taking those principles and you're putting them into practice in a controlled environment,
I,
essentially.
I, I think that's it. I think I learned a lot about it. I think that's basically cover crops in a nutshell.
Yeah. So
Uh,
I mean, don't leave your soil bare. Your
unless
soil,
you want dirt, right?
it's your most important resource,
Yeah.
and you got to take care of
Yeah.
it.
You're creating a desert because that's all it is, right? It's just sun hitting dirt. So don't do that. Cover it up.
Yep.
Well, thanks. I appreciate learning all of that. And I can't wait to see what we're going to talk about next time. So join us back here for the next one.